Every era has its signature crimes. In the 20th century, Wall Street swindlers promised investors impossible returns with paper stock certificates. The early 2000s, accounting scandals and pyramid schemes captured headlines. And in our digital age, cryptocurrency has taken its place in this lineage of opportunity and deceit. To many, crypto was a ticket to a new financial frontier, decentralized, borderless, and outside the reach of governments. But for fraudsters, those same qualities offered the perfect cover. Among the stories that illustrate both the allure and the danger of this new frontier, few are as dramatic as that of Zhimin Qian, also known as Yadi Zhang. She went from being a promising business figure in China to the architect of a financial deception so vast it entrapped more than 128,000 people. By the time her operation unraveled, authorities in London had seized 61,000 Bitcoin connected to her, a stash worth billions of pounds, and now recognized as one of the largest single crypto seizures in history. To understand how she reached that point, one has to return to the mid-2000s in China. This was a time of rapid growth but also deep uncertainty when many ordinary people were searching for safe ways to grow their savings. Qian seemed to offer a path. Through a company called Tianjin Lantian Zhirui, she marketed investment opportunities that promised returns few banks or funds could match. Some investors were told to expect triple-digit growth with figures as high as 300% dangled before them. For families worried about the future, these promises were irresistible. Thousands signed on, transferring money into what they believed were high-yield projects. But behind the glossy surface, the enterprise was hollow. Like the Ponzi schemes before it, Lantian Zhirui relied on a constant influx of new investors to pay out earlier ones. It was never about sustainable profit, it was about illusion. As word spread of strong returns, more money poured in, and by 2017 the total taken had reached staggering levels. To put it bluntly, Qian had orchestrated one of the largest mass deceptions China had ever seen, leaving behind a trail of broken trust and financial ruin for the equivalent of a small city's worth of people. Where her story diverges from traditional frauds is in how she chose to protect the fortune she siphoned off. While many scammers launder money through offshore accounts or hidden companies, Qian turned to cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was still in its relative infancy, unfamiliar to the average investor, but already popular with those who saw its potential for secrecy. She quietly began converting the stolen funds into digital assets, storing them in wallets secured by encryption rather than bank vaults. It was a move that would later define the uniqueness of her case. Where her story diverges from traditional frauds is in how she chose to protect the fortune she siphoned off. While many scammers launder money through offshore accounts or hidden companies, Qian turned to cryptocurrency. Bitcoin was still in its relative infancy, unfamiliar to the average investor, but already popular with those who saw its potential for secrecy. She quietly began converting the stolen funds into digital assets, storing them in wallets secured by encryption rather than bank vaults. It was a move that would later define the uniqueness of her case. When the walls began closing in, Qian made her escape. In 2017, she slipped out of China under a false identity, armed with a passport from St. Kitts and Nevis obtained through fraudulent means. Her destination was London, a city long known as a hub for global finance and foreign wealth. There, she presented herself not as a fugitive, but as an affluent international businesswoman. Life in London was a study in contrast. On the one hand, Qian enjoyed the trappings of luxury, settling into a mansion in Hampstead, one of the capital's most exclusive neighborhoods. On the other, she lived under the constant need to disguise her fortune's origins. Cryptocurrency was valuable, but it was also hard to spend openly on property or jewelry without raising questions. To bridge that gap, she relied on an associate, Jian Wen. Wen's journey into Qian's orbit was unlikely. A former takeaway worker, she suddenly found herself thrust into a world of luxury transactions and multi-million-pound deals. Acting as a front for Qian, she attempted to buy high-value homes and jewelry, converting Bitcoin into tangible wealth. The pair's activities might have gone unnoticed had it not been for the scale of their ambition. Attempting to channel billions into London's property market was bound to raise eyebrows, and soon investigators were on their trail. The decisive break came in 2018 when the Metropolitan Police raided properties linked to the operation. What they uncovered was unprecedented. Digital wallets containing around 61,000 Bitcoin. At the time, this cash was already worth hundreds of millions. As the years passed and Bitcoin's price climbed, its value soared into the billions, estimated at over £5 billion today. The discovery stunned even seasoned investigators. It was, by any measure, the largest crypto seizure the UK had ever seen, and one of the largest globally. The seizure of such an enormous fortune brought both relief and new challenges. The police now had evidence on a scale rarely seen before, but they also had to manage the logistics of securing billions of pounds worth of digital currency. Unlike stacks of cash or gold bars, Bitcoin is intangible, existing only as code. Safeguarding it meant protecting keys and ensuring no access by outsiders, a responsibility that weighed heavily on investigators. In the meantime, attention turned to those orbiting Qian. Jian Wen became the public face of the case long before Qian's own trial. Prosecutors described her as the conduit through which Qian's crypto wealth flowed into visible assets. She had accompanied Qian on shopping trips for expensive jewelry, tried to close deals on multi-million-pound properties, and presented herself as a wealthy investor in her own right. The court eventually concluded that Wen was not simply a bystander, but an active participant. In 2024, she was convicted and sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison. Her trajectory, from takeaway worker to the right hand of a fraudster moving billions, was startling, and it underscored how ordinary lives can be swept up in extraordinary schemes. For Qian, accountability came a year later. By 2025, her cover had unraveled, and the woman who once passed herself off as a successful entrepreneur now stood before Southwark Crown Court. In September, she pleaded guilty to charges of acquiring, possessing, and transferring criminal property. It was the first time she formally admitted her role in the scandal that had upended so many lives and captivated the attention of international media. The timing of her plea also highlighted the remarkable inflation of the seized assets. When the Bitcoin was first discovered, it was already a significant find. But as cryptocurrency markets rose, the value of her hidden fortune grew to an estimated £5 billion or more. The number was almost abstract in its scale, larger than the annual budgets of some government departments, more than the combined fortunes of entire neighborhoods of Londoners. For the thousands of victims back in China, the sheer size of the hoard was both infuriating and surreal. They had lost savings meant for their children's education or their own retirement, only to discover their money had been transformed into an invisible empire of digital wealth half a world away. Behind the scenes, governments wrestled with how to handle the case. The fraud had originated in China, the assets were discovered in Britain, and the victims were scattered. Cooperation across borders was essential but complicated. Financial crime is by nature global, but legal systems remain national. How to repatriate assets, how to compensate victims, and how to prosecute across jurisdictions became questions with no easy answers. British authorities took the lead on prosecuting Qian for laundering and possessing criminal property, but the broader question of restitution remains unresolved. What makes this case resonate beyond its headlines is what it reveals about the shifting landscape of crime in the digital era. Investment scams are nothing new. Ponzi schemes, in one form or another, have existed for over a century, but Qian's decision to rely on Bitcoin as both a shield and a vault placed her at the frontier of financial deception. Cryptocurrency's promise of decentralization became, in her hands, a tool for concealment. She could carry billions across borders on nothing more than a memory stick or a set of alphanumeric codes. It was both ingenious and reckless. For law enforcement, the case marked a turning point. It demonstrated that cryptocurrency could no longer be treated as a niche curiosity. It was a financial reality capable of being exploited at scales previously unimaginable. The UK's seizure of Qian's Bitcoin was hailed as a victory, but it also served as a stark reminder that the arms race between regulators and criminals is far from over. In the end, the story of Zhimin Qian is more than the tale of one woman's ambition and downfall. It is a cautionary chronicle of an age where money moves faster than oversight and where the tools that promise liberation can also enable exploitation. For the victims, more than 128,000 of them, the billions recovered cannot erase the years of anxiety and loss. For governments, the case underscores the urgent need for global cooperation in tackling financial crimes that respect no borders. Qian's name now sits among the ranks of infamous fraudsters, but with a twist that reflects our era. Where others left paper trails, she left encrypted keys. Where others stored wealth in offshore banks, she hid it in blockchain addresses. Her downfall is a reminder that while technology changes, the human impulses behind such schemes, greed, deception, and the belief in invincibility remain constant. As she awaits final sentencing, the legacy of her scheme is clear. The world's largest crypto seizure is not simply a story of crime and punishment, it is a landmark moment in the ongoing struggle to balance innovation with accountability, freedom with oversight, and it stands as a stark warning. In the dazzling promises of new financial frontiers, old dangers still lurk, often multiplied in scale by the very tools that make those frontiers possible. Thank you so much for watching and for taking the time to follow this incredible story of Zhimin Qian and the world's largest crypto seizure. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think this case says about the future of cryptocurrency and financial crime? Leave a comment below and let's continue the conversation there. If you found this story valuable, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Till next time, goodbye.